Good morning, all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So, in this video, we are going to discuss the important articles for 21st of January 2023. So, a foreign affairs minister has to say that India did not wait and did what was right to help Sri Lanka. So, we know about the economic and the political turmoil that is going on in Sri Lanka. So, emphasizing on India's neighborhood first policy, he said that we did what was right and we did not wait for what is going to be the other country's response, because if Sri Lanka wants the IMF package that is going to be around $3 billion, so that can be accessed or that would be approved for the Sri Lankan economy only when the official creditors of Sri Lanka, which includes China, Japan, and India, they provide adequate financing assurances to IMF. So India has given its assurance, and in that backdrop, we are saying that India did not wait for what is going to be China's or Japan's response to this, and we did what is right. Then coming to whether charge sheets should be made public or not. So Supreme Court says that they need not be put in the public domain, and state is not obliged to provide the public free access to charge sheets by uploading them on the government websites, and they declared that these are private documents. So Supreme Court in 2016 a judgment, they said that the direct copies of the FIRs, they should be uploaded within 24 hours of the registration on the police or the government websites. But in this case of charge sheet, they should not be made public because they are private documents. This is what has been upheld by the Supreme Court. And talking about this 2016 judgment, which is regarding making, or you can say uploading the FIRs on the government website. So it was said that this is going to enhance transparency in the criminal justice system. And obviously, we are aware about the wrestlers protesting in Delhi against the president of Wrestling Federation of India. So he's been accused of sexual harassment and intimidation. And this is the case, and a decision has been taken that a committee would be constituted, and that would be handling the all the working of the Wrestling Federation of India until proper investigation is completed. So that is there, and they have ended their protest. Then we come to the editorial page. So firstly, we'll be taking up the article which is regarding that our panchayati level governments, they hardly have any autonomy. So recently we saw that an up sarpanch in Telangana, he committed suicide due to indebtedness. So he had taken a personal loan to undertake development works in the village, but we can say that the government delayed releasing the funds by 1 year, and because of which he was under debt and he committed suicide. And obviously this is a very sad news, and we see that more than 3 decades have been completed when we first implemented the 73rd and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts in 1992, which gave the constitutional status to the local governments. The state governments, through the local bureaucracy, they continue to exercise considerable discretionary authority, and they influence the panchayats. So here we'll be looking into what are the challenges when we talk about decentralization of power at the ground level, at the panchayati raj level. So the authors of this article, they spoke to several sarpanch and local bureaucrats to assess the what is the extent of decentralization of powers to the panchayats, and they found that sarpanch, they need to have more administrative and financial autonomy for a meaningful decentralization of power. So this is one outcome of the survey that they did. So we'll be talking about what are the challenges and what are the issues. So firstly, there is the issue of funding. So gram panchayats, they remain fiscally dependent on the grants, which is both discretionary and non-discretionary demands from the state and from the center for their everyday activities. So broadly, they have three main sources of funds. So first is their own sources of revenue, which includes local taxes, which includes octroi, revenue from the common property resources. Secondly, they receive grants and aid from the center and the state governments. And thirdly, they get discretionary funds from the schemes that are launched by either the government, the state government, or the central government. So these are the three main sources of funds for the panchayati governments. So their own source of funds, that is, we can say that is very a tiny proportion. And secondly, when we talk about the discretionary grants to the panchayats, that remain contingent on the political and the bureaucratic connections. So again, they are basically, there is not, we can say, much transparency when it comes to the devolution of funds at the local level. And there is inordinate delay in the transferring approval of the funds to the panchayat. So there is obviously it requires a lot of paperwork and taking permissions. So there is inordinate delay, and because of this delay only, we saw that the up sarpanch, he took his life. So state governments, they impose spending limits on various expenditures through the panchayat funds. So even the state governments, they are interfering in free and fair functioning of the panchayati level governments. And in almost all the states, there is a system of double authorization for spending the panchayat funds. So the sarpanch, they require permission from the block development officer and from the panchayat secretary. So you require a lot of permissions when it comes to disposal of funds, and obviously there is a lot of delay, and the sarpanch, they have to wait for them to be seen or heard by a bureaucrat. Now, talking about the second challenge, so it includes the taxing process of seeking approval. So as we just saw that the process of seeking approvals and permissions is very tedious. So firstly, the project, they often require some technical approval that comes from the engineering department, and some administrative approval from the local offices of the rural development department, which includes the block development officer. And this is a tedious process for sarpanch that requires paying multiple visits to the government offices, and only after that it is not sure that they will be getting the permission or not. So they have to run here and there between several government offices when it comes to seeking permission. And the ability of the sarpanch to exercise the administrative control over the local employees is also limited. So they do not have the complete independence, and sarpanch, they does not even have the power to dismiss the local level employees also. So this is the situation at the ground level. And third challenge is regarding the bureaucracy. So the Gram Panchayats Act, in many states, it is empowered the district level bureaucrats, mostly the district collectors, to act against the sarpanch for official misconduct. So in several states, the bureaucracy has been empowered to take an official action against the sarpanch. And apart from the abuse of power, embezzlement, or misconduct, the conditions which include mere refusal to carry out the orders of the district collector or the commissioner or the government for the proper working of the concerned gram panchayats, they have been cited for removal of a sarpanch. So here obviously your personal interest comes in, and this is the situation, and these are the reasons cited by the district collectors when it comes to removing the sarpanch. So, India, it has limited decentralization, because if the local governments, they get genuine autonomy to allocate the monies, power will shift from the MLAs and the state government controlled bureaucracy to the sarpanch. So because of this thing, we see a limitacy when it comes to devolution of power or devolution of money to the sarpanch, because then they will become much more powerful, it is believed, compared to the MLAs and the state government control bureaucracy. So because of this mentality, we see this limitation, and obviously this is hampering the free and fair and rational and transparent working of the panchayats. Then talking about the Indian exports, so we obviously know about the global situation, which have already started impacting the Indian exports, and which is maybe it is going to increase in future. So the worst effects of faltering the Western economies, they are yet to hit the Indian exports. So in December 2022, it marked the steepest fall in 2 years for India's goods exports, and we saw 12.2% lower exports than a year ago in December 2022. So, in December, we saw how our exports are being impacted, and the reasons are the clouds of recession, which is blowing through the Europe and the US. Then, COVID-19 situation in China is another reason, and a reversion towards protectionism in some markets. So, we've already discussed this thing before, that few countries, they are now again shifting back to protectionism, and USA is definitely one of them. So to be clear, another reason is also a high base effect that has played a role in exaggerating the year on year export dip in December. So here, what is important for you to understand is to have clarity about the meaning of a low base effect and a high base effect. So in case of high base effect, whenever we like, obviously here we are comparing the figures on year basis. So whatever is the base year or through which we are comparing the figures, if the performance has been commendable, or the we can say the data is very high, like when here we are comparing the situation with year ago exports. So in December 2021, the exports, they have performed really nicely. So when we compare that situation with December 2022, we see even if there is a small dip, it would appear to be a huge dip in exports. So this is known as the high base effect. And when we talk about the low base effect, so whenever the base year performance remains very low and there is a small improvement, or a we can say a little rise in inflation, so it appears that inflation has increased too much because of the low base effect. So we often hear about the low base effect in the context of inflation. So in that context, I have explained you what do we mean by low base effect, and here in case of exports, what do we mean by the high base effect. Then the other silver lining is that imports, they have also contracted 3.5% in December. So it is not just that exports have fallen, but imports, they have also fallen. And this is the first such instance since November 2020 that exports have fallen by 3.5%. Then some recent government moves, such as government has fixing of the glitches in duty remission scheme for the exports and lifting of the curbs on the iron ore shipments. It has helped, but more macro and swifter micro policy actions, they are warranted to keep the export engine chugging. So that is there, and here we'll be just looking at how since we know how demography is changing in China, and a couple of days ago, we saw that India is soon going to overtake China when it comes to the most populous country in the world. So we are seeing that the birth rate in China, it is declining, and because of this, wages are rising in China, and the labor intensive jobs, they are moving out of the Chinese economy, and they're predominantly shifting towards the Southeast Asian economies. So obviously this opens a window of opportunity for India to grab it, and things we can say the businesses, they are now shifting to Southeast Asia because of the demographic changes happening in China. And signs are that China is already on track to follow the Japan's example of a prolonged period of shrinking working force with declining growth. So obviously, since businesses, they are impacted hugely at a larger scale because of this change in demography in China, so it is expected that it would be showing up in low growth figures there. Then let's move ahead. So as we were seeing that charge sheets, they have been termed as private documents and they cannot be made public. This is what is being upheld by the Supreme Court. So it is saying that putting up the charge sheets for public viewing, it would violate the rights of accused, the victims, and even the investigating agency, and it would also be contrary to the scheme of the Code of Criminal Procedure. So that has been the reason cited by the Supreme Court why they have been termed as private documents. Then, regarding new guidelines to regulate the promotions on social media, obviously, in this new era of digital technology where we are so much like spending our time on social media. So, obviously, when it comes to the endorsements by the social media influence, the celebrities, so guidelines becomes important. So, the endorsement guidelines for the celebrities and the social media influence, which mandates their compulsory disclosure of the monetary and the material benefits of the product or the brand that they are promoting through social media platform, has been made mandatory, that they would have to transparently disclose what is the monetary or the material benefits of whatever they are promoting through their social media handles. And if they fail to do so, it will attract a penalty of rupees 50 lakhs. So this is one of the new guidelines, and the disclosure, it must be prominently and clearly displayed in the endorsement, and terms such as advertisement, sponsored or paid promotion, that should be used for all sort of endorsements that they go ahead with it. Then talking about the biodegradable plastics, so we are seeing a hurdle since we know that center it banned the use of single-use plastics, and it paved the way for the use of biodegradable plastic. And obviously we'll be looking at what are the other alternatives to single-use plastic. So we have the option of biodegradable plastic, but again there are certain challenges when it comes to manufacturing and their usage. So there is lack of coordination among the multiple ministries, which has led to a logjam in the production of the alternatives to the single-use plastics. Because what is there is that the BIS, it has established a provisional protocol of testing the biodegradable plastic, which says that 90% biodegradation should be achieved to pass the test, and which may take up to 2 years. So this is the major hurdle, that if suppose an item has been termed or it is being manufactured and it is being termed as a biodegradable plastic, so BIS, it says that there obviously it becomes important to carry out a test to ensure that whether it is really a biodegradable plastic or not. But the problem is that firstly, the situation or the eligibility condition to call a plastic as biodegradable plastic is that it should disintegrate 90% or biodegrade 90%. But the main problem is that this test, it takes up to 2 years to testify whether a plastic is biodegradable in nature or not. So for the next 2 years, obviously it is like the manufacturing companies cannot sit and wait for the results of this test, because it takes 2 years. And so in this backdrop, the Environment Ministry, it issued a notification in July 2022, which banned the single-use plastic, but it allowed the manufacturers to get a provisional certificate, which will be valid for June 2023 from the Central Pollution Control Board, allowing them to make the biodegradable plastic goods. So for the interim period, we can say the manufacturers, they have been given this thing that they can take provisional certificates which are going to be valid up till June 2023, and they can manufacture the biodegradable plastic goods until they get the results of this test. But such a certificate, it could be procured if a manufacturer, it obtained an interim test report. So there is one more condition to get a provisional certificate. So there are a lot of hurdles, and the main thing that is bothering the manufacturers is that there is lack of coordination among the multiple ministries, and they are not able to manufacture the biodegradable plastic. Then talking about how the internal security scenario has been changed in India, how the we can say the the factors which influence the or which hamper the internal security, how the nature of the factors has changed. So firstly, our home minister, he was addressing, and he said that Jammu and Kashmir was gradually, it is heading towards peace and stability. And he says that internal security challenges in the country, they have now transformed from geographical challenges to thematic challenges. So earlier, when we say that there existed geographical challenges to Indian security, India's internal security, that included unrest in the northeastern region, then there was terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, and thirdly, left wing extremism. So these were the geographical challenges. Now, when we say that they have transformed into thematic challenges, so that includes cybersecurity risk, then we have data security. So these are the thematic challenges, and obviously, the problems, they have also become now multidimensional, because we have so much of like development at the technological front. So things, they are now becoming intermixed, they are becoming more blurry, and that's why we are saying they are becoming more multidimensional. So that includes narco test, and there is now fourth generation war, so that has chipped in. So when we talk about the fourth generation warfare, so as I just said, that things are becoming more blur. So that the fourth generation warfare it is characterized by a blurring of the lines between war and politics, combatants and civilians. So things are getting intermixed, and there is no, we can say, proper defined challenges in today's world, as it was in the case of geographical challenges. And he also directed the police officers to focus more on urban policing. And so there is obviously the problem of the drugs and psychotropic substances. So all these things, they become important, and these are, we can say, the transform challenges when we talk about India's internal security. So that is there. And when we talk about the decline of the left wing extremism, so in 2010 there were 96 terror affected districts, and which has now come down to 46, and all kinds of violence, it has seen a 40 to 60% decline. Then Pakistan is going to buy oil and gas from Russia for mutual economic benefit. And you should be knowing that India is heavily importing the crude from Russia, which is at discounted prices. So that is also there. And even Pakistan is now going ahead. And obviously, we know the situation in Pakistan also, how even it is waiting for an economic package from IMF. And talking about the countries, now they are taking decisions to increase their defense expenditures. So France, it now plans to increase the defense spending by a third for the next 7 years. And when we talk about other economies, it includes Germany, France, we have seen, and then it includes Japan also. So the countries, they are taking a decision to increase their defense expenditure, and which is definitely a thing of concern, because it might happen that things might escalate in future, or how is it going to be. So in the context of the changing global scenario, India should also factor in how it should be going ahead when it comes to its defense spending. And when we talk about, are we really heading into a global recession, so we are every day seeing news that the big tech companies, they are doing large amounts of layoffs. So today we see that Google, it has approximately like laid off 12,000 people, that is close to 6% of its workforce. So which is very huge, and this is because the IT companies, the benefit of the economic growth that they saw during the COVID-19, now that is declining, and we are seeing huge amount of layoffs. And when we talk about Wipro, when we talk about Swiggy, when we talk about Microsoft, all these companies are doing huge amount of layoffs, and that is going to be a concern for the employment, or when we talk about the rising problem of unemployment. So in that context, here this article is, it is portraying that Despite the economic growth, we are seeing urban youth find fewer jobs, and hiring also slows down in the export dependent sectors, because again, export sector will be impacted, and we are seeing the impacts because of the global economic slowdown on our export sector. So we see that there was re-entry of nearly 20 million workers into the job market after the pandemic has aggravated the problem. But now, obviously, this thing has also become a concern, that there was re-entry of nearly 20 million workers, and now we are seeing that few freshers, they have been laid off, and this is going to, we can say, increase or push up the unemployment problem more. So rising unemployment in India, it belies the other indicators, suggesting that economy is undergoing a healthy rebound from the COVID-19 pandemic. So because this is such a huge concern that unemployment is rising, so this is basically overshadowing the good performance of some other indicators, which is showing that we are definitely recovering out, we are rebounding after the COVID-19 pandemic. But the situation or the main thing remains that unemployment is also rising. So instead, we see that the surge in the people who are looking for work, many of them are rural migrants, and this raises the concerns about the consumption and the long term growth prospects. So if unemployment is going to increase with time, it is definitely going to impact us in the longer term. And obviously, if there is going to be more unemployment, people are going to be less, we can say they'll be paid less, or their wages is going to reduce. So that will also impact the consumption demand. And talking about the urban unemployment, so urban employment unemployment, it has increased to 10% in December. Although we see that the total number of jobs in India, it touched the pre-pandemic level of 410 million, but the unemployment is rising, and there was a rebound in the labor force participation rate, which is mainly driven by the return of women workers and the rural youth. So, more and more people, we are seeing that the labor force is increasing, but the jobs are not, or even if we see the current jobs, so people, more and more people are being laid off when we talk about the big tech companies. And globally, India remains a bright spot amid the growing fears of recession in US and Europe, and our economy is projected to grow below 6% in the next financial year. So hiring in the export dependent manufacturing sectors, which includes the engineering sector, textile, software, that has seen a slowdown because of decline in the overseas demand. And worsening employment scenario, it could affect the consumer demand, it can drag the private investments, and it can hurt the growth prospects. So if we see that the consumer demand will be impacted because of this, and this is also negatively going to impact the private investment sector, and that is further going to have more repercussions when we talk about our economic growth. So that is how there is an entire vicious chain, how it is going to impact the entire economy and several sectors if things start to unfold in an unfavorable manner. And we are seeing a start from the IT companies. Now we'll take up the Financial Express. So in Financial Express, we'll be seeing, okay, so here first we'll be looking at the National Land Monetization Corporation. So land monetization is stuck, and it is expected that it is going to gather pace only after the next pending general elections, that is in 2024. So here we'll be looking at what is its structure. And so, for it was established for the monetization of the surplus land and the building assets of the central public sector enterprises and other government agencies. So, the entity is still lacking the requisite manpower, and secondly, it does not have a full-time CEO yet. And monetization, it is expected that is going to give a fillip to the tune of rupees 111 trillion when we talk about the national infrastructure pipeline, and it is also going to support the Gati Shakti connectivity project as well as the housing sectors. And it was set up with a seed capital of rupees 150 crores, and it is a wholly government owned company. So The CEO is going to be from the government sector and the chairman from the private sector. So here you can have a look at the figures about the surplus land that is owned by the CPSEs and other government entities, which is expected to be monetized. Further, we see that fragmentation can cost 7% of the global GDP. This is what the IMF chief has to say. And asking the world to be pragmatic and collaborative, she said that fragmentation can cost up to 7% of the global GDP. So if we don't unite now, we'll face significant risk to the economy and people's well-being. And this fits well when we talk about climate change. So we need to work in a united, in a cooperative and a comprehensive manner when we talk about tackling climate change challenges. Then coming to the editorial page. So here, what can be the steps taken to when it comes to reducing the cases or judicial pendency, specifically when we talk about the cases related to taxation. So here we are talking about a single solution, a single suggestion, which has already been used in the past. So the idea is to come up with the dedicated tax benches with deep understanding of the tax law principles. So dedicated tax benches and an undue delay, it also creates a perception of unfairness and uneasiness in the minds of the foreign investors. So here we are trying to say that because of a huge amount of judicial pendency, specifically relating to the cases that are related to taxation, so that negatively impacts the FDI inflows, because then the foreign investors, they have a certain kind of perception of unfairness and uneasiness, or we can say it hampers the ease of doing business. So that's why even the FDIs are impacted because of a huge amount of pendency, and steps have to be taken in the recent past to reduce the pendency. So the government, it has taken certain steps in the form of schemes, which includes Vivad Se Vishwas scheme and Sabka Vishwas scheme to settle the litigations with the taxpayers. And we definitely saw that they were successful, but there is still considerable pendency of cases. So quick disposal of the disputes pending before the Supreme Court is required. And if Supreme Court comes ahead or it takes the leads, then obviously it is going to have the trickle down effect, in the sense that the higher courts and lower judiciary, it will be following the verdict of the Supreme Court on the cases having similar nature. So that is how it is going to quickly help in reducing the pendency of the cases. So recently, the Chief Justice of India, he has constituted and made a dedicated and exclusive benches to decide the tax matters, and this definitely assumes great significance. So these dedicated tax benches, they are not going to be regular in nature. And when we talk about that, the similar, exactly the same step was taken in 2005, and we saw that it was able to dispose of almost 800 cases. And because of merely reduction of 800 cases related to taxation, it helped to infuse a huge amount of money into the Indian economy. So you can see the direct relationship between the two variables, that is, reduction in the pendency of cases leads to increase in FDI in India. So this we saw in 2005, and again on similar lines, the Supreme Court has taken the same step when it comes to formation of a dedicated tax bench. So what are the main issues when we talk about the taxation sector in India, or the nature of the cases related to taxation? So that includes transfer pricing adjustments in case of excessive advertisements, then marketing and promotion, then expenses, so it is marketing and promotional expenses, and it is valuation disputes are there under the excise and the customs, and the treaty interpretation issues under the double taxation avoidance agreement. So these are some of the nature of cases which are pending, and several such disputes are pending before various high courts also, and benches of tribunals, which includes the income tax appellate tribunal, the customs, excise and service tax appellate tribunals also. So as we just said, that if Supreme Court takes the lead, it is definitely going to have trickle down effect, and quickly reduce dependency of cases. So this can be one of the ways which can substantially help us in reducing dependency and at the same time attracting more of FDI. So that is there. And okay, so that's it for today. Thank you for joining in Sarkari. I hope you've understood all the key points. You can go ahead with the PDF also. You'll get the link in the description box. And do not forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, share this video as much as possible. See you soon. Thank you so much.